Hello everyone and welcome to Forever Rugby. My name is Stephen Pettit and welcome to what will hopefully become one of the biggest rugby fan channels in the world. If you're new to the channel, make sure you like and subscribe. Bottom right hand corner there, go give it a subscribe if you enjoy the video. Today we are going to be talking about Aphiwe Dyantyi and what has become one of the biggest, most drawn out sort of doping cases of the last few years, and it really has been a very, very strange journey. That's taken over a year long. I mean, the first time that we heard about this whole fiasco was last year during August, and we still haven't had the final hearing or a verdict. So it's been quite a confusing sort of story and timeline. So I thought today I'm going to break down the entire events from the very beginning right up to where we are right now, and hopefully sort of give everybody a general idea of what's happening, what's to come, what can be expected, and try and piece together what has been a very complex journey and a very sad journey. Because, you go back, 2 years ago, and Aphiwe Dyantyi was currently lighting up the Springbok field, on his way to making the Breakthrough Player of the Year. A year later, the Springboks won the World Cup as Makazole Mapimpi scored that sort of penultimate try that won us the World Cup. And, nothing against Mapimpi, but it was all set up to be Dyantyi. That should have been Dyantyi's moment. That was going to be Dyantyi's World Cup. He just burst onto the scene from Varsity Cup to Lions, Super Rugby, Currie Cup to the Springboks. He'd had such a meteoric rise and everybody was waiting for this World Cup, and they all said, this is going to be Dyantyi's World Cup. We all remembered how good Brian Habana was in 2007. This was all set up to be Aphiwe Dyantyi's World Cup, and it didn't happen for him because of this doping case. And the biggest problem for me is the fact that we still do not have clarity over what actually happened. So let's try and get stuck into it and sort of piece together the journey to where we are right now. And the journey all starts on the 2nd of July 2019. And this was the first time that Dyantyi failed a drug test. He was at in the Springbok training camp at the time. And he had been tested 2 weeks earlier and had come back negative and there were no issues. And then 2nd of July, he failed a doping test whilst currently in the Springbok training camp. This was not disclosed, however, and nobody knew anything about it. This will only come out later. But 2nd of July, write that down, that was the first time he failed his test. His A sample failed the test. So on the 15th of July, Dyantyi had been struggling with injuries in the lead up. And on the 15th of July, the Springboks confirmed that he had left the training camp and would return to the Lions Johannesburg to continue his recovery from a hamstring injury. Once again, no talk about the doping test or the failed test at all at this stage. So, at this stage, it was just an injury, and suddenly everybody was worried about sort of a race against time. Had he played enough rugby? Was he going to be able to make the squad? Does Rassie Erasmus take a risk on him? But there was no issue about doping at this point, the 15th of July. So the first time we heard about it was the 24th of August. This was when it was announced, or that the press found out that his A sample had tested for a banned substance, and that he and then he gave a statement and he requested for his B sample to be tested. So at the time, on the 24th of August, he gave a statement. And some of the snippets of the statement read as follows. This is Dyantyi's words. I want to deny ever taking any prohibited substance, intentionally or negligently, to enhance my performance on the field. I believed in hard work and fair play, the wing said. I've never cheated and never will. The presence of this prohibited substance in my body has come as a massive shock to me, and together with my management team and experts appointed by them, we are doing everything we can to get the source of this and to prove my innocence. I underwent a drug test on the 15th of June, which did not return any adverse finding. So at this stage, that it was, to be fair, an A sample testing negative is not the worst thing, because that's why they have the B sample. So sometimes it can be a faulty test or whatever. So that is why they then test the B sample. However, that didn't go particularly well, because on the 30th of August, his B sample came back as positive, and he was formally charged by the South African Institute for Drug-Free Sport, and he was found to have 3 different banned substances in it. I'm not even going to attempt to try and say the name. If you anyone to know, I'm going to put a link in the description of a few of the articles that lead up to that explain the entire situation. So this was really the end of Dyantyi's World Cup hope and season, really, because suddenly he had been charged, and should he have been felt guilty, he was facing a minimum of a 4-year ban, which for a 25-year-old at the time, was going to be massive, and that was, could potentially be the end of his, not necessarily the end of his career, but 4 years is, that's him out of the World Cup, that's him out of the possibly the next World Cup, and that was massive. So he was then given two options. He was either going to be able to accept the sanction, or accept the charges and say that what he did was wrong, or that he made a mistake or whatever, and accept what would be a reduced sanction, because obviously if he intentionally took it, the punishment can go up to 6, 7, 8 years, even lifetime. Chidiboy Walepele just got an 8-year ban for his drug results the other day. So at this stage, he was left with two options. Does he challenge this and try and prove his innocence? Because if you can prove negligence, but it has to be without a reasonable doubt, and that he took every single step available to him to ensure that the substance, that the supplements he took didn't contain what was banned. He has to prove without doubt that it was no fault of his own. He can't just sort of say, "Oh, I didn't know," or "I just took a thing." That sort of excuse no longer applies. It is because it is so highly regulated in the professional sports arena. You have to make sure you are actively always ensuring you know exactly what it is you are putting in your body. And the problem is that the supplement industry is so unregulated within South Africa. So often, things are put together where it contains mixtures of certain substances. So this sort of thing happens. However, because of that, they are very strict on professional athletes, and they say you need to make sure that you are testing whatever you're taking and making sure that you're taking the right sort of stuff. So that's when he was left with an option of whether he either accepts the sanction or whether he opposes it. Then on the 19th of September, it was confirmed that he was going to challenge the charge, that he was not going to plead guilty, that he maintained that he was innocent, and that they are going to challenge it. And what was going to happen if he pled not guilty like this? Then a hearing was supposed to take place within 4 weeks in front of an independent panel to then decide on the outcome. And on the 19th of September, Gert van der Merwe, who was his lawyer, said that the hearing will be within the next month. So, in October, hopefully it was going to. So obviously too late for the World Cup. That was done, but it was more about his playing future as a Springbok, as a player. Will he be able to play for Lions Rugby in 2020? Will he be able to play for the Springboks? Because, not playing 4 years means that could have been a Springbok career over. So 19th of September was when they announced that they were going to be challenging it. 10th of October is the next trigger date, and that is when the SARDS, S-A-R-D-S, the South African Institute for Drug-Free Sport, Khalid Khalant confirmed to EW Sport that Dyantyi's lawyers had asked for an extension, and this is a quote from him, which said, "We haven't set a date yet. They have applied for an extension in terms of gathering their evidence together, but they will be contesting the charge." So confirming that they will not be pleading guilty and they will be contesting the charge, and that they have applied an extension. He said, now this is on the 10th of October, "We have given them 21 days extension, and once that deadline is closed, we'll set a hearing date, which will be in November." So suddenly from October, it was going to be a hearing in November. And then we didn't hear much. And on the 20th of November, suddenly Dyantyi broke his silence for the first time with a very long social media post. And, recently he's opened up with the fact that, for these 2 months he stayed at home. He didn't speak to his family. He didn't speak to anyone. He kept himself by himself because he was so devastated on the incident. And this was the first time he had sort of broken his silence. And he came out and he said that his heart was at peace, and that he had acknowledged what was going on, and that he's now being more focused on the future, and that he's more optimistic. To be fair to him, you've got to understand the devastation of if he is innocent. He was missing out on the World Cup. Everything that was good. For somebody who had such a big, life story and such a big rise. For him suddenly missing the World Cup and stuff like that was devastating. And this was the first time he had come out publicly on social media and sort of talked about where he was within his life. But we didn't hear much about what happening in terms of the hearing or anything like that. Then on the 12th of December, Khalant then told the members of the press that a judgment in both cases, there was him and Ralapele at the time, were going to be expected in January. So from what was supposed to be a November hearing, suddenly we were being told that in January the results will be shared. So we had another sort of deadline for what was going to happen. Had he been cleared, he still would have been able to play during the 2020, hopefully, and continue with his career. However, 15th of January came, and suddenly they said that they had yet to settle on a date for a hearing, which was followed by the apparently a request for another extension towards the end of the year. It's a bit sort of sketchy as in terms of it's the original extension or if there was another extension. Apparently there was a whole bunch of substances that he wanted to have tested by the labs and stuff like that. So suddenly from what was supposed to be hearing the result in January, they hadn't even had the hearing. And this was a direct quote from Gelant, which said, Dyantyi contested the charge and asked for an extension before any hearing could take place. But we are hopeful and optimistic that something might happen by mid-February, said Gelant. He said that we are ready to go. So says we're ready to go at that point. And then after that, there was almost like a complete blackout. We didn't hear anything during February and nothing during March. And then obviously the COVID-19 pandemic happened. And so we had all the lockdown, obviously, and everything was kind of shelved. And we didn't hear anything for months and months and months. And suddenly on the 30th of June, there was then an update from Gelant where he said, and I quote, "We have to develop a procedure and protocol for a virtual hearing." This is because of the lockdown. And then the athlete, his counsel, and the arbitrating panel have to agree because the virtual hearing is a new thing. We can't just say we are going to have a virtual hearing. We have to give the parties the right to accept it or decline it and make sure the witnesses are not compromised. We are probably going to do it within the next 2 months. So from November to January results to February hearing, we are now in June and only going to be happening in the next 2 months, July, August. The hearings delay has also been blamed on the closure of the testing so apparently the labs were closed. So he said initially we were supposed to have the hearing in early mid-April, from February to mid-April. But Dyantyi had to have a couple of supplements analyzed. So, once again, just all this sort of, we don't know what's happening. New information has continued to come to light, and there was no sort of logical timeline as to why it has taken so long. But Dyantyi and the lawyer came out and said that they were happy to do the whole virtual hearing. And then finally, last week on the 4th of September, there's finally been a date that has been set as the 15th of September. And this has been confirmed by Gelant of that. So we are finally, after, more than a year later, almost 15 months later, we are finally set to have the hearing date, which is on the 15th of September. And, it's one of those things. It's just been a fiasco. And from beginning to end, it's taken too long. There hasn't been enough sort of reasonable explanation as to why it's taken so long. And if he does clear his name, he suddenly lost a year of his playing career. Look, luckily for him, there hasn't been much rugby this season, but it could have been another entire season he's missed. And look, to be fair, this is all assuming he can be proven innocent. If he obviously gets proven guilty, then he deserves everything that has happened to him, and it's one of those things. He has to accept it. I err on the side of I really want to believe him. I've been such a Dyantyi fan. Obviously, watching him from UJ, watching him in the Varsity Cup and saying, this player is a special player. Watch him in the Currie Cup and you're saying, yo, look, he's made the step up. He can definitely be a Super Rugby player. And then just having that phenomenal season where you had to say, well, he has to be a Springbok. And then he just kept getting better and became the World Breakthrough Player of the Year. So, as somebody who's tracked his progress, as a Lions fan, tracked his progress, it's just been so upsetting to see this whole thing drag out without enough sort of clarity. And to be fair, he's had a lot of public support. A lot of people are sort of on his side and saying it just doesn't seem like something he would do, which is not an excuse because, maybe he was a mistake. And that doesn't mean he necessarily took it, but maybe he didn't do enough to make sure that he was testing the supplements, which again, you can't justify it because he's a professional athlete and there are these systems in place to help him with this sort of thing. So 15th of September is the date for the hearing, and we can finally hopefully hear what is going to happen. But regardless, he's lost a year of his playing career, and what will be interesting is if he does get found guilty, whether they take this last year as the first year of the suspension, or if it starts at the time, in which case he's going to lose at least 5 years of his playing career, which is really sad for a player that had so much potential. But we'll have to wait and see. So I'll bring you all the live updates on the hearing and on what's happening there. Lots of really cool rugby content coming up from the channel. So make sure you subscribe in the bottom right-hand corner. Get involved with Forever Rugby. We're on Facebook as well. You can follow Forever Sports on Twitter as well as Instagram. To become part of the channel, we're very new. We want to try and give the fans a voice. Hopefully have a lot more fan stuff coming up. We want to get fan cams, have people calling in when we hopefully eventually get rugby back in South Africa. Players are back in full contact training, which is very, very exciting. But Forever Rugby, my name is Stephen Pettit. Thank you very much for watching. And make sure you like and subscribe and become part of the channel. And I will see you guys next time. Until then, keep well.